Greetings programs, TRON FAQ here, but you might know me better as LDSO on social media, and I'm the member of the LDSO team that maintains all those accounts. I've also worked on various LDSO projects, including the killer app mod, which I started. I almost didn't make this video for reasons that will become clear by the end, but after debating it for a while, I have decided to show something I've been working on for quite some time. What I'm going to show in this video is something I've done in response to what I saw in many TRON 2.0 videos playing through the single-player campaign on YouTube. I've seen quite a few players getting stuck at a particular point on the level you're seeing here, the Alan's desktop PC level that's roughly a third of the way through the campaign. I'm about to show you what I observed. Even though I'm playing TRON 2.0 with the work-in-progress killer app mod version 1.2 right now, I've reverted the level back to be the same as the unmodified retail version of the game. I'll finish the puzzle to configure the COM port here, so we move forward to the objective where we need to talk to Mithria through an I/O node.
I'll get right on it.
If the player pays attention, they'll notice an objective update notification after finishing this puzzle. It says to access an I/O node to receive a message from Mithria. Which I/O node though? Well, there are actually two of them in the part of the level that you can currently access. One here, and one over there beside Mithria. Zooming in on Mithria shows that you can now talk to her, so the game is inviting you to go over to Mithria and hear what she has to say. Since there also happens to be an I/O node right there beside her, it's not unreasonable to expect that that's the I/O node you should probably use to receive the message. At the same time, if the player has their attention focused on wanting to talk to Mithria, it's possible they might not even see the I/O node here by the COM port configuration panel. So let's go over there and listen to what Mithria has to say.
Jet, activate the I/O node. I've got something that may be of interest to you.
Mithria says to activate the I/O node to receive a message that may be of interest. So again, the suggestion is to use the I/O node right here. But this is what happens. The second I/O node by Mithria doesn't work at all. And if the player didn't see the first I/O node, now they're going to get stuck, unless they wander around, wasting time and getting frustrated before they stumble onto that I/O node, eventually. Normally, you shouldn't have the permissions needed to activate the I/O node beside Mithria, but with the killer app mod's permissions cheat, you can. Here's what happens if you use that cheat. The I/O node activates, but nothing happens. Not good. Now, as it turns out, Monolith Productions did have an additional line for Mithria to say, to try and help prevent the player from getting stuck for precisely this reason. But it went unused, and after listening to it, you'll immediately know why.
Activate the I/O node opposite from here.
As you can hear, that's not Cindy Morgan as Mithria. It's a temp track probably recorded by one of the staff working at Monolith that didn't end up getting re-recorded. Since it didn't match the final English voice for Mithria, Monolith couldn't use it. But, interestingly, this unused line was recorded with the final voice actors selected from Mithria in all the other languages officially supported by the game. So French, Français, German, Deutsch, Spanish, Espagnol, and Italian, Italiano.
Active le nœud ES situé de l'autre côté. Aktiviere den I/O-Knoten gegenüber von hier.
Activa el nodo ES que está en el lado contrario.
Attiva la sezione opposta del nodo J qua.
Even if the line had been used, the English version of it, in particular, still wouldn't be that helpful. Activate the IO node opposite from here? Okay, so if the player didn't notice the other IO node before, at least the player knows to look for one now. But where? IO node opposite from here really isn't descriptive enough and could even be considered more confusing than helpful. So how could this be improved and made less confusing? Here's what I did in Killer App Mod version 1.1a.
I'll get right on it.
When the player finishes the COM port puzzle, a modified version of an objective update notification appears. As you saw earlier, it just used to say, access an IO node. Now it says to access the IO node beside the COM port configuration panel. So if the player reads this notification, they'll know which IO node to use, and it should avoid some unnecessary frustration. But what if the player misses the notification and never reads it? Maybe there's something else even more helpful that can be done. Here's another early attempt at a more helpful fix for the upcoming Killer App Mod version 1.2. In addition to the modified notification from version 1.1a, now the IO node beside Mithria can't be interacted with at all by the player. A prompt doesn't even appear when you highlight it with your reticle. Combining the notification and the fact that this IO node can't be interacted with probably would have been pretty helpful as a hint to players that they need to use another IO node to receive Mithria's message to progress further in the game. But I still felt that this could be done better. What about just removing the second IO node then? That would avoid confusion if there's only one IO node that you can use. Well, that's actually the solution that was implemented in the Xbox release of TRON 2.0. The developer on that version, Climax LA, did remove this second IO node to avoid confusion and players getting stuck here. Problem solved, right? Except that's not an acceptable solution as far as I'm concerned. First off, just removing the IO node is a lazy way to fix the issue. But more importantly, it's not a great idea for narrative and in-universe reasons. In the TRON 2.0 universe, programs communicate with each other over distances using IO nodes for talking and sometimes even sharing messages or other data. If the game is asking you to use one IO node to receive a message from Mithria, if this second IO node is removed, how is Mithria going to talk to Jet while he uses the first IO node and then send the message? That's why this second IO node is there. It's meant for Mithria to use. So no, the second IO node shouldn't be removed. What else can be done then? Here's my latest attempt at fixing this issue on the Alan's desktop PC level in the upcoming Killer App Mod version 1.2.
I'll get right on it.
Upon completing the COM port puzzle, the player continues to receive a modified objective update notice. If you listen to Mithria, she still says to activate the IO node at first.
Jet, activate the IO node. I've got something that may be of interest to you.
As you can see, the IO node can be interacted with again and isn't completely disabled. But now, if you try to activate the IO node without the correct permissions, this happens. The player receives the objective update notice again, just in case they didn't notice it the first time. And if the killer app mod's permissions cheat is used, the IO node no longer activates like it did before. The IO node still rejects being activated. Either way, you'll notice that now you can listen to Mithria again a second time.
You'll need to activate the IO node by the COM port configuration panel.
So, if by this point the player hasn't discovered where to go to continue progressing through the level, Mithria will inform the player directly. Since the unused line of dialogue couldn't be used because the voice didn't match and I felt it wasn't helpful enough, as you may have guessed, this is a new voice line that I created for Mithria. It's not another unused line left hidden in the game's assets. And though the game has a fallback method where it simply opens and closes the mouth when a character speaks, it gives that character a ventriloquist dummy kind of look. Here's what that looks like.
You'll need to activate the IO node by the COM port configuration panel.
It doesn't look that great without proper lip sync, so I went to the trouble of figuring out the process of adding that proper lip syncing for the new line, with the mouth movements matching the words spoken. But let's listen to the new line of dialogue from Mithria one more time.
You'll need to activate the IO node by the COM port configuration panel.
And here's why I almost didn't make this video, for two reasons. One, I wasn't able to achieve a completely satisfactory result with the new line. It's by no means perfect. It sounds off. It has a kind of staccato rhythm to it that doesn't sound natural. But I don't think I'll be able to do any better than this. That's because I took snippets of other existing lines from Mithria and combined them to create a new line. But what about AI voice cloning, you might ask? Well, I actually did try that. I tried different voice cloning tools and countless different settings. The results weren't good at all. What I ended up with was a voice that sounded like Cindy Morgan, but with the Mithria voice filter missing, and as if it was being played back through an old-fashioned gramophone. This leads me into reason number 2 as to why I almost didn't make this video. Aside from both methods I tried using, not creating a line of dialogue sounding natural enough, there's also the question of whether or not creating a new line for Mithria will be considered doing something in poor taste. As you may or may not know, Cindy Morgan passed away recently at the time I made this video. I'd been working on creating a new line for Mithria since before Cindy's passing, and my intention was to use what I'd done as a placeholder for now, and to eventually try getting in contact with Cindy to ask if she'd be willing to record a single new line of dialogue for Mithria. I know I probably wasn't being realistic, but I still wanted to try. But now, that's no longer possible. So the question is, do I go ahead with releasing the version of this fix, where Mithria speaks a new line, as part of the updated Killer App Mod version 1.2? After debating it for a while, I decided that adding this would be intended as a tribute to honor Cindy Morgan and her character of Mithria, and I hope that other fans will see it that way too. But you'll all have to let me know whether or not you think the result is good. This is TRON FAQ, signing out.
End of line.